Hi, welcome to the Moran Center training on how to use our case management data system, what we call the legal server. I'm Megan McClung, and I'm the school-based civil legal clinic attorney. And with me today, I also have Anya Joseph, who is our AmeriCorps Vista intern through the National Legal Aid Defenders Association. Also with us is Isaac Slavin. He's our Moran Center administrative volunteer. And also joining us is Lindsay Labkin, who's been a volunteer with the Moran Center for the last 2 years. This training is going to start with a brief introduction, and then Anya's going to go over a case intake using the legal server. We're going to turn it over to Lindsay as the assigned volunteer and show you how she uses it to keep her case organized through communications. And in the end, we'll wrap it up with any questions that you have. Please know that at any time, whether it's after this training, after you watch this, because we're going to record it and put it on our website, you can contact me, and either myself or Anya will be happy to have a one-on-one session with you to help you use Legal Server or to answer any of your questions while you're doing a case intake. The reason why today is so important, and I'm so grateful for everybody who's attending today, is that our legal clinic really stands in the front lines of the pandemic by helping the legal needs of families with school-aged children. We address major issues of health and safety through the services we provide. And these services are free, and they're free because we're funded by our community, our donors, and our grants. And these successful fundraising efforts for our agency are made possible by collecting and sharing data to our supporters, not only on how we help, but who we serve. Last fiscal year, ending June of 2020, our clinic served over 110 families in over 120 different matters. And the data for all of those cases were maintained on our Moran Center legal server. We expect the number of those cases to significantly increase this year. And so because of the rise of calls, because of the data collection we need to support our fundraising efforts, it's important that our legal clinic volunteers understand how to use Legal Server for our data management. So the goal of our training today is to help you feel comfortable with it, and the benefits to you will be immense. It'll be efficient case management, paperless intakes, remote intakes, our subject matter questionnaires, email documents, resources, they're all contained on the legal server. And all of that is thanks to Anya Joseph, our intern, who has helped me revamp and revise our new and improved legal server. So please help me welcome Anya, and she's going to go ahead and go through a case intake by sharing her screen.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen now and take you guys through a case intake. So we're going to start at the very beginning, which is logging in. This URL right here is what everyone should be navigating towards. You can find it through the link tree or by typing this into your navigation bar. Your username will always be your first initial and your last name. I'm using a test account, so ignore that. And your password will be mcclinic1900. When you log in, this is what everyone shall see. A couple of things to note is that all of your assignments will be housed right here in My Assignments. As you can see, I have a case right here. This is basically the only place that you will have to navigate on your home screen. There are these two buttons here that say Begin School-Based Civil Legal Clinic Intake and Begin School-Based Civil Legal Clinic Prescreen. A prescreen is basically, we'll just log basic information, but no intake questions. And this is what Megan will do in order to assign a case to a pro bono advocate. And once she creates a prescreen and assigns it to you, it'll show up here. Important things to know is that you'll see that there are blue clickable links here for name and for matter case ID. It's always important that you click matter case ID and not the name when trying to navigate into a case file. If you click the name, as I'll show you here, it'll just take you to this screen, which shows basically name, address, and basic information for them. But in order to go into their case file, you have to click this matter case ID. Once you click that, it'll take you to pre-screen summary, which is all the information that Megan had filled in previously when assigning you the case. You then have to navigate all the way to the bottom of the screen where you'll see this, where it says pre-screen status. You click this drop-down menu, and in order to begin the intake, you have to scroll down to begin school-based civil legal clinic intake. This is the only button you should be pressing on this drop-down menu. And once you press it, you have to press continue. A good rule of thumb that is that to save any information that you input on LegalServer, you always must press continue. So you press continue and it'll take you to the school-based civil legal clinic intake form. So because this intake was already created, Megan has already entered in the first name. You can then click this little button here, which will take you to the calendar, and then we're on the 8th, and that is the date opened. You will usually fill out all of this information, but the only information required of you to fill out are the ones with the red star here. So in order to continue to the next page, you must fill out every field with the red star. So I'm going to just use Evanston zip code, and it'll fill that in for you here. In order to get this drop-down menu to give you all of the counties that you can click, you have to click show all values. And this whole drop-down menu will show up. We're in Cook County. All of the counties are available. Megan, if you want to touch on why we have all counties in this drop-down menu. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. So LegalServer is not perfect, and because this is pre-programmed, this is something that we have to fill in, and it has all the counties for Illinois. We've tried very hard to change this, but we can't.
So usually you'll just be navigating to Cook County. And then you fill in all of this information that they'll have here. You have to fill in the date of birth. I'm just gonna pick a random one. And then when you get to the bottom of your screen, you'll have this little box that says intake notes. This box will follow you to each page you go through on your intake. So if I type in something here, like test intake notes, just so I can show you that it'll follow you to every screen. And then I can click continue to save all of that information. This will bring you to the conflict search. If your client has come to the Moran Center before for any other reason, it'll show up here. As you can see, we do a lot of test cases, so obviously Jane Doe is showing up here quite a bit. But if you see a conflict here, then you would have to go ahead and reject the case. In this case, because this is a test case, I'm just going to ignore that this has come up. But if you see your client has been here, you will then navigate to the bottom of the screen and click client conflict status, and you will click conflict, and then you will click this button here that says reject in order to reject the case.
There may be times where you see the client appear, and that's a returning client. If you're unsure, you can always say undetermined, continue the case intake, and then contact me.
So if you're unsure what to do, you will just click this button, continue. And as you can see, the intake notes have followed me here. So if you have anything else to add, you can add it to this box. If you want to make the box larger, you just have to click this corner right here and drag, and it will make it as large or as small as you want it to be. So to save this information, then I click continue. For add an adverse party, if you want to, I don't know how I can see the chat. Isaac, do you mind reading the question to me? You're on mute.
Yeah, for sure. It says, what constitutes a conflict?
Sure. So a conflict is if somebody comes to, if a mother comes to our clinic and says that she wants help getting visitation for her child, and you put in her name, you put in the adverse party's name, which would be the father, and it comes up that the father is a client of the Moran Centers, there would be a conflict.
So as Megan was just saying, you put in adverse parties here. So if there was a father involved in the case that you wanted to enter in here, you would put in his name. I'm just going to put test to show you how it works. And then any other information that you have about this adverse party, you can put there, and then you would press save and search. And again, so for example, if that father had come to the Moran Center before and this is a conflict, it would show up here. And then similarly to the previous page, you would click conflict and then this reject button down here. However, if you're unsure, you can click undetermined and then consult with Megan and just continue the rest of the case intake.
Or if nothing comes up, click no conflict and you can go on.
Exactly. Okay. And then you click continue. So this is when you get to the applicant demographics. All of these with the red star are required. I understand that sometimes it's hard to collect all of that information right away. So if you're unsure or haven't collected that information in your initial intake, you can always click no and then go back and enter in this information later. So it's not an end all be all. You can always edit. So I'm just going to enter in some test information for all of these questions. When you answer the question, is applicant housed, depending on if you say yes or no, yes, which suggests they have permanent housing, will pop up this menu, and then you can just navigate to whichever option best describes your client's situation. And similarly, if the applicant isn't housed, a homeless drop-down menu will pop up and you can pick whichever option describes their living situation.
And again, sometimes it's hard to ask a client these questions, but you can gently remind them that we are a community-based organization. All of our services are free, and it's because we collect demographic information. And so I always say, if you have a little patience with me, there's a few questions I have to ask, and I go through this very quickly.
And then again, these intake notes show up here if you want to add anything. Because this is the school-based civil legal clinic and we are helping families with school-aged children, there will always be children involved in the case. So depending on how many children are involved, you will use this drop-down menu to pick. I will just pick 2 for now. And then based on that, these fields will show up. So for example, if you pick 6, then 6 fields will show up. I'm just going to enter in 1 actually. So you'll enter in the child's name, their age, the schools that are available. If you don't see your child's school on here, then you can just click other not listed, and then the grades that they're in. So I'll just test. Okay, this is the financial information section of the intake form. You'll have to fill out these 2 fields here. As I said, in this children's education information, there is one child, one person under the age of 18. Sorry, Isaac, go ahead.
There's a question that says, what does the word involved mean? How many the client has in the district, or how many are at issue in the case?
Good question. It would be how many children the client has. Sometimes the children are involved, sometimes they're not, but we do want to gather all the data of how many children they have. And then in the notes section, you could specify which children are involved in the legal matter they're calling about.
So going on to financial information. you would enter in the amount of adults that are in the household and the number of children. There's one child in this case. And then for income entry, the most important thing to know is that you have to enter this question. There is an option for no household income if there isn't any. I'm just going to click employment, and then you can also toggle this drop-down menu, which will allow you to put in the amount of time they're paid if that is helpful. I'm going to just put in 30,000 annually. And if you want to enter in multiple types of income, for example, if they're receiving child support and employment and an income from, and their spouse also has an income, then you can use these two buttons here. The green button will add a field for you to enter in, and the red button will take that away if you make a mistake. Megan, would you like to explain this?
Yes, so the number to look at is what's in red. With the 30,000 annual income, the percentage of poverty comes up at 137%. We generally represent up to 200% of the percentage of poverty line. It would take a little bit longer for me to explain how we figure out that basis. It is federal government data that is given to us. It's what all the legal aid organizations follow. And this is just supposed to be a simplified way of doing this. If anybody ever wants to see the grid on how this is calculated, I'd be happy to share that. But if you happen to add in an amount and it gets over 137 or over 200%, you may want to add in the financial notes what some of their debts or expenditures are, because we will take that into consideration to see if maybe they can qualify.
And then again, to save all of this information, you click continue. So this is the subject matter intake question. Some of you are familiar with the forms that Megan would send out to you previously that were on paper. These are just those questions that have been transcribed into LegalServer. So as you can see here, there's a little note that says hold down the control key to select more than one option. So if you have, say, a bankruptcy case, you'll click bankruptcy and these questions will pop up, which basically is just in regards to what you would need to know for a bankruptcy case. If you have more than one case, you can press control and click as many that are involved in this case or with this client, and they will all pop up here. I'm just going to, for the sake of this, do adoption. And these are all questions that you will answer. If you see this little question mark here and you hover your mouse over it, it'll give you more information about the question. For example, like this, if the answer to the question is less than 1 year, please consult with a clinic staff attorney. So you'll then enter in all this information. As you can see, your intake notes are here again, so you can add anything else you would want to add here, and then you will press continue. Again, if you don't know the answer to any of these, you can always edit it after the case has been, after the case intake has been completed. Okay, lastly, are these case questions. The intake program is already filled in for you. It'll be the school-based civil law clinic, and the level of service will most likely always be brief service, if not something else that you would put in here. But if you don't know, then brief service would be a good option to pick. And then legal problem category. Megan, would you like to explain these?
Yes, if you could click on the drop-down menu.
Yes.
So these legal problem categories, you see that adult criminal is in here because the criminal side, the education side of Moran Center also uses LegalServer. But you'll see the majority of these are civil legal issues. So if you click on housing law, then a new drop-down menu comes and it is a little bit more tailored. So it will generally be landlord tenant, or if you can make it more specific, if you can click back on landlord tenant, maybe it has to do with housing discrimination, and you can click on that. There's public housing, mobile home. Most likely it's the landlord tenant, but if there's something more specific that triggers one of those, by all means, try to narrow the legal problem.
And if there's more than one legal problem code, Megan, what would you suggest?
To put it in the notes section, because what we will need to do, what I'll need to do, is create more than one case matter for the client. And that's something we can just do on the back end.
And then the ones that are the most important are employment law, housing law, family law, public benefits, and then other civil legal. Those are usually the ones that you'll be interacting with. This funding code, you can just ignore. It's already filled in for you. No need to touch it. Basically just shows us on the other end which funding, where we're pulling our funding from for this. And then again, you see your intake notes here if you want to add anything else, and then you press continue to save that information. And then this is the last page. The disposition will always be pending, correct?
Correct.
And the primary assignment will always be Megan, because it has to be a full-time Moran Center staff employee. So it will always be Megan. But in order to add yourself to this case, when you're completing intake, you have to click yes to an additional assignment. I'm going to be adding Lindsay to this case so that she can have access to the file. You have to click include all pro bono users, because all of the volunteers are entered in as pro bono users. And then you will navigate to your name. This is Lindsay has 2. And then all of this information is already filled in here. If you have any other notes, you can enter them in here, or if you want to send this note as an email to yourself or to Megan, you can click send this note as an email and then enter in the recipients. If I entered in Megan's name here, it'll pop up and I just click that and it'll send her the following email.
Which is great, because that's a way of letting me know that you completed the case intake. I'll also point out, if you look to the left side of the screen with all the green check marks, that's every page that you've seen Anya go through. So if you're ever going through a case intake and you have to pause and you have to go back, you'll be able to see what you've completed.
And if you remember something or something else comes up later in the intake, you can always navigate back by just clicking this. So if I wanted to go back to children's education, I can just click that on the side. It'll take me back there and then take me back here. We asked this question, may we follow up with you in a few months via text message to ensure that you receive satisfactory services? We asked this to our clients so that we can send them a text survey when they're done with their time with us, so that we can measure if they have had satisfactory services. We use this for funding purposes and grant writing purposes. So it's really helpful if you would ask them this. I'll just click yes for now. And then case status, depending on whether you're the pro bono advocate that's working with them or they'll be assigned to another one, you can click pro bono placement accepted, pro bono placement, pro bono working, or awaiting pro bono placement. I'm just going to click pro bono, awaiting pro bono placement. And then finally, in order to save all of this, I click continue. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Okay, so that is your entire case intake completed. And then this is what we would call a case file with all of that information that you just entered in. So now I'm going to pass it off to Lindsay to take you through how she uses LegalServer to manage her cases. Are there any last questions about the case intake that I just did?
I'm looking in the chat and I see that we still have some issues with logging into the LegalServer, and that's something Anya and I can work with you on after this this training.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, so Lindsay is now going to share her screen. So we're switching. So what you've now seen is I created a case, I sent it to Anya, and Anya is the volunteer who did the case intake, did the callback, got all the information. She then talked to me, and between the two of us, we were able to determine that Lindsay has capacity to take this case. And so if Lindsay said, yes, I could probably help advise, or I can maybe represent, I would then assign Lindsay the case like you saw. And then Lindsay is now going to share her screen and show you how she would use the legal server to keep track of her emails, her notes, her to-do tasks, everything to make her use of the file more efficient, while also collaborating with not only me, but maybe her co-counsel. A lot of times she co-counsels with Stacy Michelon, who is another great volunteer for the Moran Center. And the two of them can then keep track of all of their information in one platform. So that is a real benefit of using Legal Server.
Can you see my screen, Megan?
Yes, we can see your screen. So now we're on Lindsay's screen, and we're going to go ahead and go through this. So Lindsay, if you can scroll down, what you can see is her assignments. And I'm just going to let Lindsay do some talking, and between the two of us, we're just going to go through how she would use the Jane Doe. So again, she's going to click on the case matter number, not the name, and it takes her to the case. And so
go ahead.
So as she scrolls down, you'll see at the very top, the contact information, the mailing address, and then the next field is case notes and emails. Don't worry about time slips, litigation information, or referrals. You'll probably never use that. But case notes, Lindsay, can you show us how you would add a case note?
Sure. So there's a plus sign right here, and that lets me add an activity. So I would just press it. And then I would click on, it already has the date. I would click on the activity, and it would either be a note or a phone call. It would be any one of these. Just say it's a case note. Or do you want me to do a specific one?
Sure, do a case note.
Okay. And then.
Yeah, you can, that's a field that we can't get rid of. But you'll see the next one is attached documents. So if this was a phone call and then your client texted you documents or something, you could go through attaching documents, which we'll show in a second. But Lindsay, go ahead and just put in test. All right, and now if she was, scroll down a little bit, for communication, if she wanted to share this with her co-counsel, Stacy, she could send a note as an email so that Stacy would then see there was activity and be able to go in and check it out. And so there you can see Stacy's email came up. She would just click on it. And if you scroll down, you can just, yep, and you can add other people onto it, or you push continue and it will go directly to Stacy. So you just hit continue. So Stacy, you're gonna get this now. When you're able to log into the Legal Server. Yeah, so now she's back to the front page. So scrolling back down, so we did case notes. If you go to emails, go over one tab. All of your emails with your client will probably be done with your personal email or maybe your business email, or if you request one, we can get you a Moran Center email. And anytime you communicate with the client, it's best to try and then preserve it onto the Legal Server so that we have all communications in one place. The best way to add an email, so Lindsay, if you can walk through that for us. So if she goes to the left-hand side under Jane Doe, the blue box, she clicks on case email, and that is the email to this case. So she can copy to clipboard, you just click on that. And then she would need to go to her email screen. And so now she's composing, she's going to paste in that legal server email. And then she clicks send. Great. Now, if we could go back to the legal server, if you could hit refresh on the legal server.
Right. Then it shows up right here.
And then it shows up right there. So what's really nice about this is also the housing of documents. So clients send us documents all the time. And if they do it by email, you can just forward it to this case email, and the document will show up here as a PDF form, and it'll stay here for you to go back to and access. Another way that you can add a document. So Lindsay, if you can go up just a little bit and click on case notes. We started to show you how you could add in a document through the activity of clicking on the plus sign,
Right.
going through and adding a document that way. Another way that there's actually several ways to add documents, but I find these two are the most efficient. So let's move on and we'll see the rest of the case. So she scrolls down past the case notes field. We're then on case details, which is everything that would have been put in on the case intake. You can always go back to any of those blue fields. So Lindsay, if you could just click on legal problem code, the blue, you can click on that. And if you had to change it, you could change it here. So that's why we just want you to know that if you're like, I didn't do this right, you can always go back and change it. We can always help you do that too. So if you can go back to the first page, and you can do that by clicking the top arrow. We're still going to scroll down, and this is where it gets better. So now we're at general information that has all the children that would have been entered in the case intake. And then under that is documents. This is where you'd have to manually upload some documents, and we're just going to skip that for now. And then under documents is the tab adoption. So these are all the subject matter intakes. You saw that when you do a case intake, you can add the fields in then. If you create a case and then they call and say they have other issues, here is where you can go and add in more information. So let's say there is an adoption issue. You could click on the blue question on the left and add in the answer to each one of these. To add in another one, you would just click through the tabs. So Lindsay, if you could just click on consumer debt, it takes you to all the consumer debt questions. So these are those subject matter questionnaires we have in the volunteer manual, and they're now here on the legal server, easy for you to access. I'm just going to pause for a second. The last email you received from Isaac also sent our Linktree document, and that Linktree is nothing more than a way for you to access all of these on our Google Drive. So we wanted people to be able to access this through many ways. Legal server is the easiest, but we also have it on Google Docs as a backup. So if you continue to scroll down to the bottom.
Sorry. I think I'm at the bottom.
Okay, that's the bottom. So that's the end. And then you can see this is where we have the survey for when the case is closed. Lindsay, is there anything else that you would use legal server for your case management?
I mean, I think you covered it. Communications with the client, the intake, documents. That's all we've used it for right now.
Okay.
Maybe to communicate with you so that you know what's going on in the case.
Yeah, and then if you scroll up, something I forgot to show, just pause when we get to, it is our resources. I think it's a little bit further up. Scroll back down.
Just want to make you dizzy.
Yeah, so Anya, if you could help me out where the...
Yeah. So it should be right there, but this is usually there will be a list of documents right here, but I have just not yet added housing discrimination as a problem code to.
Oh, I see.
So That's my bad, but
That's okay. So let's change that. So Lindsay, if you can scroll up and the legal problem code right there, if you can change that to just landlord tenant.
it's right above.
Yeah,
I
it's right above the check mark. There you go. And then hit continue because that'll save it.
Then you have to fill out level of service really quickly because otherwise it'll.
Yeah, and when in doubt, click brief service. Okay, now scroll down and let's see if those case documents came up. Yes, there they are. So the other thing that we've now housed onto Legal Server is resources for clients, such as unemployment benefits fact sheet that we used in our training. The volunteer manual is here. There's a handout about workers' comp. You also see that our paper intake form is here in case you need that for some other reason. You'll also see the disclaimer for the client in Spanish and English is right there. That is something that we ask volunteers to send while it's pending on whether we're going to accept their case or if we're just going to sort of advise, and that's all that they need. So anytime we do a case intake, you always want to be sure to send the client that disclaimer. And then you can attach it to an email using the Legal Server email so that we have that preserved. One other that I would point out, if you can click on it, Lindsay, is the referral resources. This is, and then click on the PDF. So the document title, there you go. And when you open that up, these are resources I've compiled of agencies in Evanston that can address housing resources. So if you can scroll down just kind of quickly. There's also resources in child, family, and guardianship cases. Like if somebody needed a YWC order protection, we'd refer them to the YWCA, and that information's on there.
This is amazing, Megan.
And then other legal aid agencies we can send them to if they don't qualify for our services. So all of this is now here on the Legal Server. Trying to make things efficient and better for our volunteers and their experience with the Moran Center. So we can go ahead and stop sharing the screen. Great, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and then we'll take questions. So thank you everybody for watching this.